Welcome to Event Ordering Strategies. The core problem is that a system can look correct when events arrive neatly in order, but fail as soon as timing, retries, or concurrency change the execution model. So the real question is, what do we do when producer intent and consumer experience diverge? A publish event may arrive before the approval event it depends on, and a careless consumer will process the first message it sees. That only works if delivery order equals logical order, which is the hidden assumption we need to surface.
So the bug is not just bad timing, but that the design never made the ordering rule explicit?
Exactly. Once that assumption is exposed, the next step is to decide whether the system should detect, buffer, or prevent the out-of-order case. This is the baseline path: producer, queue, consumer, and then the consumer immediately processes the first message it sees. The pressure point is that this path looks fine in a happy path test, even though it says nothing about whether the consumer can survive reordered delivery.
Why does this pass so easily if the design is wrong?
Because the test is only proving one interleaving. A defensible design has to prove what happens when that interleaving changes. Sequence numbers make ordering explicit. If the event says version 5 and the current state is only version 3, the consumer can see the gap instead of guessing and corrupting state.
So the invariant is no longer implicit in the delivery path. It lives in the version check?
Yes, and that comes with a trade-off. You now have to maintain version state and define what the consumer should do when a gap appears. Causal ordering pushes the same idea further. If event B depends on event A, then B must never run ahead of A. The dependency has to be part of the design, not just part of the developer's mental model.
Isn't that just a stricter version of versioning?
Related, but not identical. Versioning tracks state progression. Causal ordering protects the dependency between events, so the workflow does not advance on the wrong premise. If an event arrives early, one response is to hold it in a buffer until its predecessor arrives. That lets the system release events in the correct order without immediately rejecting useful work.
So buffering fixes the ordering problem by waiting?
It fixes one failure mode, but not for free. Buffering consumes memory and adds policy decisions about how long waiting is acceptable before it becomes a new problem. Partitioning keeps all events for the same entity on the same consumer path, which reduces cross-worker interleavings. If every event for episode ID 1 lands on one worker, that worker can preserve local order much more reliably.
So the trade-off is better order control, but less flexibility in how work is distributed?
Right. It improves locality and ordering, but it can also concentrate load and create bottlenecks if the shard key is poorly chosen. An asynchronous boundary is where work stops being immediate and continues later, often on another worker or event loop. That boundary is where assumptions about timing usually break, so it is also where the design has to preserve the relevant state and evidence.
What should I be looking for at that boundary?
Ask what state must survive the handoff, what can be retried, and what proof shows the work actually completed. Now the failure becomes concrete. Worker A ships an order, then crashes before acknowledging the message. The queue redelivers the same event to worker B, and the side effect happens again.
So the hidden assumption was that delivery count and execution count were the same thing?
Exactly, and that assumption is what breaks the invariant. Evidence like delivery IDs, entity IDs, and audit logs is what lets you prove the failure actually occurred. The protected property is that a retried event must not inflate side effects or hide lost work. The usual response is item potency keys, durable completion records, retry safe handlers, and reconciliation scans.
Isn't adding item potency enough?
Sometimes it is the right first control, but not always sufficient by itself. You still need to decide how completion is recorded and how gaps are detected after failure. Evidence is what makes the claim reviewable. Delivery IDs, entity IDs, state transition logs, and the audit trail should let a reviewer reconstruct whether the worker succeeded, whether acknowledgement was lost, or whether the same event ran twice.
What would count as enough evidence for the integrity packet?
Enough evidence is whatever lets someone else replay the failure mentally from the artifacts, logs, traces, repeatable test output, and the before and after behavior of the fix. Different approaches protect different properties. A simple baseline is easy to explain, but it hides timing assumptions. A guarded transition protects the invariant directly, but it needs careful state modeling. Explicit coordination makes dependencies visible, but it can introduce weighting. Idempotent design handles duplicates and retries, but it needs keys and deduplication.
So there isn't a universally best fix.
No, the right choice depends on which failure you are defending against and what trade-off you can afford. For your own system, start by naming the invariant or progress property. Then write one sequential scenario that should succeed and one pressure scenario that could expose the weakness.
What should I record if I want to defend the fix later?
Add operation IDs and entity IDs to your logs, capture before and after evidence if you apply a fix, and update the integrity packet with the assumption, validation, and remaining risk. The central insight is that event ordering strategies are not just terminology. They are a way to reason about whether a system remains correct when execution gets messy, and the design is only mature when it can be explained, stressed, repaired, and validated with evidence.
So the final standard is not just a working fix, but a defended one.
Exactly. The fix has to survive the failure, and the evidence has to survive the review.